management, and advertisers.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year in the Excellence in the Arts Award. And is one of the highest Arbitrum, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. Hey everybody, great to see you all again. I am Doug Basham, card-carrying member in good standing, I might add, of the Enemy Within Brigade, also known as one radical leftist lunatic who needs to be handled by the American military. And so, I welcome you all to Day 8 of Morning in America, morning spelled with a U, of course, as we Constitution-loving patriots who truly love this country grieve the loss of the great American experiment in self-governance and democracy, and anxiously await the stroke that will save mankind. My website is DougBasham.com, last name spelled B as in Bob, A-S-H-A-M as in mayhem, DougBasham.com, my email, Doug@DougBasham.com. That said, I extend a warm yet crestfallen welcome to those of you listening on KSHP AM 1400 and 107.1 FM on your radio dial here in Las Vegas. We are also broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, and of course, Twitter/X. Now again, if you go to my website, DougBasham.com, you will discover it's all of one page. At the top, you'll see the show's logo. Underneath, 10 links, most to my social media sites. Also one to contact me via email. Actually, there are now 11 links on my website. I added Blue Sky last night. Blue Sky was a social media site that was created in opposition to X after Elon Musk turned X into a virtual cesspool of right-wing propaganda and lies. Now, I have no followers, and I think I'm following all of 6 people, but it's a start. Now, the 2 links I would like to call your attention to the most on my website are 1, my YouTube page, and 2, my TikTok page. On my YouTube page, I would respectfully ask you hit the subscribe button. On TikTok, hit the red follow button. And hey, if you would like to watch the show live and not just listen to it, reason being when I play clips, I don't play audio clips, I play video clips. Also, because obviously this face was made for television. From my website, go to my YouTube, Facebook, or X pages. And if I violate YouTube policies and they suspend my stream mid-show, which hasn't happened in a while, fingers crossed. But if it does, go back to my website, then to my Facebook, or to my X page. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you would like to talk on the radio somewhere in our second half hour together, that's 702-221-SAVE, as in save our democracy, something we failed to do on Tuesday, and miserably. And now on to our broken news for the day. The past couple of days, we have focused on the different ways the Orange Trader has been flexing his dictatorial muscles, even before his scheduled return to the White House. And again, I do not think that should happen. And I did a 15-minute bit on that the week before the election, exactly 1 week before the election, on not only why it should be prevented, but how it could be prevented. If you missed it, it remains the pinned post on both my Facebook and X pages. Now, I've been told it's a must-watch. Now, I believed it was a must-watch before anyone else told me they agreed, but it's always nice to receive ego-pleasing confirmation. And just for the record, I did another bit yesterday that is also a must-watch. It is now right underneath the pinned post about which I just told you. It's titled simply, Democrats Do Something. And it addresses the facts that Democrats are still in power for a little over 2 months. They've got the White House, they've got the Senate, they have a president with presidential immunity, and yet, what are they doing? Nothing, except wetting their pants over what the Orange Trader is already doing and will continue to do once he retakes power. Oh, and inviting the Orange Trader to the White House today. You know, because we're Democrats. We follow the rules and norms. We're willing to sacrifice our Constitution so we can feel good about honoring our Constitution. We're Democrats. Now, if you missed it, that is the second post on my Facebook and X pages. Please check it out, and while you're there, please share both of those videos. Did I mention they're both must-watch? I did? Okay, just checking. But back to Trump stretching his tyrannical powers. First, his attack on California Governor Gavin Newsom for taking steps to Trump-proof his state. Second, Trump demanding his GOP Senate majority allow him to make recess appointments right from the get-go. Not when his nominees have languished for an excessive amount of time, not when the Senate is in recess, but right away, bypassing the normal confirmation process. And third, Trump breaking federal law by not yet submitting a series of transition agreements to the Biden administration. Why? Because of concerns over the mandatory ethics pledge, vowing to avoid conflicts of interest once he's sworn into office. And yesterday, the Wall Street Journal, hardly a left-wing radical woke publication, wrote a story that carried the headline, quote, Trump draft executive order would create board to purge generals, end quote. A bit from that story, quote, the Trump transition team is considering a draft executive order that establishes a warrior board of retired senior military personnel with the power to review 3- and 4-star officers and to recommend removals of any deemed unfit for leadership. If Donald Trump approves the order, it could fast-track the removal of generals and admirals found to be lacking in requisite leadership qualities, according to a draft of the order reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. But it could also create a chilling effect on top military officers, given the president-elect's vow to fire woke generals, referring to officers seen as promoting diversity in the ranks at the expense of military readiness. As commander-in-chief, Trump can fire any officer at will, but an outside board whose members he appoints would bypass the Pentagon's regular promotion system, signaling across the military that he intends to purge a number of generals and admirals. The draft order says it aims to establish a review that focuses on leadership capability, strategic readiness, and commitment to military excellence. The draft doesn't specify what officers need to do or present to show if they meet these standards, because of course they don't. The draft order originated with one of several outside policy groups collaborating with the transition team and is one of numerous executive orders under review by Trump's team, a transition official said. This warrior board will be made up of retired generals and non-commissioned officers who would send their recommendations to the president. Those identified for removal would be retired at their current rank within 30 days. Carolyn Leavitt, the Trump transition spokesperson, declined to comment on this draft executive order, but said, quote, "The American people re-elected President Trump by a resounding margin, giving him a mandate to implement the promises he made on the campaign trail. He will deliver." The establishment of the board will be in line with Trump's calls for purging what he views as failed generals, including those involved in the chaotic 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan, according to people familiar with the policy discussions. Trump has said he would ask all generals involved in the withdrawal to resign by noon on Inauguration Day. The president-elect previewed the move during a campaign event in October, telling an audience that he would create a task force to monitor the woke generals and get rid of diversity training in the military. "They're gone," Trump said of those generals without naming specific officers. The draft executive board cites as precedent for the move General George C. Marshall's creation of a plucking board in 1940, led by retired general officers to review the files of senior serving military officers and remove from the line of promotion any officer for reasons deemed good and sufficient. The goal of Marshall's board was to make room to promote promising junior officers. But some former officials believe the incoming Trump administration is looking to politicize the military. Gee, you think? You think? Do they start wearing MAGA hats in formation to signal who's where? Asked one former senior Pentagon official. The potential for this to go wrong is infinite. This looks like an administration getting ready to purge anyone who will not be a yes man, said Carpenter, a former Army lawyer. If you are looking to fire officers who might say no because of the law or their ethics, you set up a system with completely arbitrary standards so you can fire anyone you want. In the early days of his presidency, Trump openly expressed admiration for military generals and promoted a number of them to his administration. Retired Marine General Jim Mattis served as his first defense secretary. Retired Marine General John Kelly was his chief of staff. And Army Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster served as national security advisor. But relations between Trump and the generals quickly soured. By the end of the term, all three of those officers publicly criticized him and described him as a threat to national security. End quote. And you know, this reminded me of a story I put together a bit before the election that we never got to. That happens a lot. I over-prepare. While it seems like today is an even better time to get to it than when I had originally planned. And this took place when Trump, determined to create as many logistical nightmares in as many of the states that were hit by Hurricane Helene, was campaigning in North Carolina. A Vietnam veteran, and bless his heart, gave Trump his Purple Heart. Seriously.
He had actually written a letter to you after you'd been shot in Pennsylvania. Dear President Trump, watching you during the Butler rally and you getting back up, both my wife and I gave a sigh of relief as well as a few tears. I would be honored if you would accept this small token that I received as a young Marine in Vietnam. My wife and I both thought it appropriate. God bless you, your family, and the United States of America. Sincerely, Dwight. Dwight, where you at?
Thank you.
Whoa. Looks like a check. It's a check. It's cash.
For those of you who may not know, Dwight had given President Trump his Purple Heart.
That's right. That's right.
I couldn't think anybody more deserving
Thank you.
of the Purple Heart.
Thank you very much.
You took it, you laid down there, you got back up, and the first words out of your mouth was fight, fight, fight. You didn't even have anything to shoot back at.
Oh, how did that get there? There we are. This poor, delusional, misguided hero, thinking Donald Trump deserves his Purple Heart because he had his ear pierced, which magically healed in a couple of days. And while you will never hear me speak ill of a vet, I have to admit, this shocks me right down to the very marrow in my bones. I mean, you've heard of stolen valor? In my seldom humble opinion, this is surrendered valor, or maybe abdicated valor, capitulation of valor. Take your pick. All I can say is thank you for your service, soldier, and WTF? You're giving your Purple Heart to a guy who wouldn't visit and pay tribute to the 1,800 American Marines who lost their lives at the Ain Marne American Cemetery in northern France because it was raining? Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered his speech with the rain pouring down on him, his hair flattened by the rain and water dripping off his face, and said he wasn't using an umbrella because the valiant soldiers who died there didn't have umbrellas. Meanwhile, our president was sitting in his room on his fat ass because it was raining. You're surrendering your Purple Heart to a guy who said he wants to have North Korean-style military parades so that the military would salute him? A guy who said he wanted his generals to be like Hitler's? A guy who said Hitler did some good things?
What would you say when he said to you that Hitler did a lot of good things?
Well, I tell him that. I said, sir, if you, first of all, you should never say that. But if you knew what Hitler was all about from the beginning to the end, everything he did was in support of his racist, fascist, life, philosophy, so that nothing he did you could argue was good. It was certainly not done for the right reason. And, but he would occasionally say that.
What would he say when you would lay that out to him?
He'd just, that'd be the end of the conversation usually.
You're giving your Purple Heart to a guy who's been charged with espionage for stealing sensitive documents, including nuclear secrets, refused to return them, tried to destroy evidence of his crime, and ignored a subpoena for over a year. You're giving your Purple Heart to a guy who's been charged with conspiracy to defraud the American people by trying to eliminate the votes and the will of 81 million Americans by trying to overturn an election he lost. Our cherished electoral system, a critical institution in order for our democracy to survive, and one you fought so bravely to protect. That guy, who then incited a deadly attack on our Capitol, another critical institution you fought to protect? You're giving your Purple Heart to someone who said he wanted his generals to be like Hitler's generals? To a guy who called the country you fought for a garbage can? You're giving your Purple Heart to a guy who's also facing RICO mob boss charges? A guy who harshly criticized his older brother, Fred Trump Jr., when he joined the U.S. Air National Guard. A guy who requested / demanded that states only count ballots received by or cast on Election Day in the midterms, which would have disenfranchised military members voting from abroad. A guy who called Gold Star families liars. A guy who said he would disown any of his own children if they enlisted. A guy who attacked retired four-star General John Allen after he supported and endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016 and called him a failed general. A guy who said this about his own military advisors.
But Milley was a stupid person, very stupid. But, you know, we have great generals, but Milley was stupid. Guys like John Kelly are he's one of the dumbest people I've ever met. A bully, but a weak bully. And, you know, we just have some stupid people. Kelly wasn't so involved in that, but we have some really stupid people at the top. But
we certainly do now. And you notice how casually he throws around the terms. He's just stupid. They're just stupid people. Stupid people. Like he's the genius of all geniuses. I mean, how dare he? Who in the fresh hell does this cowardly, draft-dodging, chicken-hearted punk ass think he is? Oh, he was stupid. We just have stupid people at the top. Again, we certainly do now. Add to that, this military-hating, flabby jellyfish said this.
Do you think Israel should retaliate to these missile attacks from Iran? But also, do you believe that you should have been tougher on Iran after they had launched ballistic missiles in 2020 on U.S. forces in Iraq, leaving more than 100 U.S. soldiers injured?
so, first of all, injured. What does injured mean? Injured means you mean because they had a headache, because the bombs never hit the fort. So just so you understand, there was nobody ever tougher in Iraq. They had no money with me. They would have made any deal with me. I would have had a deal made within, literally, I would have had a deal made within 1 week after the election. They were dying to make a deal. And when you say not tough, they had no money. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah.
I'm shaking the dice, getting ready to roll them. Equating brain damage suffered by our troops with a headache? After this bone-spurred, lily-livered, yellow-bellied, sap-sucking coward single-handedly destroyed the GOP's long-held claim to be the party that supports our troops, you're going to award him your Purple Heart? And now, even worse, this cowardly bastard and dictator wannabe, Cadet Bonespurs, he's going to be the one to determine which of our generals and admirals are fit or unfit for leadership qualities? Give me a friggin' break. You don't get to the rank of general or admiral without demonstrating more than sufficient leadership qualities. And of course, everyone in Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base who have long claimed a dishonest exclusivity on supporting our troops will cheer and support every soldier Trump decides just isn't loyal enough to their new dear leader, whom yesterday I called Kim Jong Vladimir Jinping Trump. Oh, and further to Trump being charged with espionage, just yesterday, a judge sentenced former Massachusetts Air National Guard member Jack Teixeira to 15 years in prison for, wait for it, violating the Espionage Act. Here's a report from CBS News, followed by the announcement from Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson, and then comments by Joshua Levy, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts.
A federal judge today sentenced a former Massachusetts Air National Guardsman to 15 years in prison for leaking sensitive military information. Jack Teixeira admitted to posting dozens of classified documents, including some marked top secret, on the social media platform Discord. The data involved a range of sensitive issues, including detailed information about Russia's war in Ukraine.
This morning, Jack Teixeira, a member of the U.S. Air National Guard, pleaded guilty. to 6 counts of willful retention and transmission of classified information relating to our national defense, admitting his guilt in open court to every count he was charged with last June. This guilty plea brings accountability, and it brings a measure of closure to a chapter that created profound harms for our nation's security. By the start of 2022, he was unlawfully removing from a secure location classified information that was clearly marked as secret, top secret, and SCI. SCI, or secure compartmented information, is used to denote some of our nation's most closely guarded secrets.
Mr. Teixeira exploited his position of trust and accessed hundreds of classified documents. He then posted them on a social media platform, a platform that allows anyone who wants to join, and it's a place where people can exchange voice messages, text messages, videos, and it purports to have over 100 million users. That's where Jack Teixeira decided to post some of our nation's most guarded secrets.
Let me read from an ABC News story. Quote, Jack Teixeira, the former Massachusetts Air National Guardsman, who prosecutors said perpetrated one of the most significant and consequential violations of the Espionage Act in American history, was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The prison sentence will be followed by 3 years of supervised release. Judge Indira Talwani issued the sentence on Tuesday in Boston federal court. Teixeira pleaded guilty in March to 6 counts of willfully retaining and transmitting national defense information. Joshua S. Levy, the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts, whose office prosecuted the case, said the significant sentence sends a powerful message to every individual who holds a top secret clearance. I expect that starting tomorrow, Jack Teixeira's name, we can go to the next one, Houston. I expect that starting tomorrow, Jack Teixeira's name will be mentioned when people are trained about the gravity of a top secret clearance and the consequences if you leak information, Levy said at the press briefing following the sentencing. Levy said Teixeira abused his position of trust and put himself above his country when he exploited his top secret clearance and made the deliberate choice for over a year to access hundreds of classified documents and share them on Discord. Today, Mr. Teixeira has paid a very heavy price for the laws he broke and for the incredible damage that he caused, Levy said, noting that it could take several years to know the full extent of the damage. FBI Director Christopher Wray said in a statement that the sentence is, quote, a stark warning to all those entrusted with protecting national defense information. Betray that trust and you will be held accountable, end quote. Really? Will you? If you break that trust and you commit espionage, will you be held accountable? Well, yeah, if you're a foot soldier. One of the biggest cases of espionage the Department of Justice has ever investigated is potentially about to disappear because our judicial system helped a certain person, not a foot soldier, but the criminal mastermind, stall his cases while he was running for president to escape the same prison fate as Jack Teixeira now faces. And now he's the president-elect. So no, FBI Director Wray, this is most unequivocally not a stark warning to all those entrusted with protecting national defense information that if they betray that trust, we're going to get them. Yeah, the foot soldiers. Federal officials said that Teixeira admitted leaking dozens of classified records, including some concerning Russia's war in Ukraine and troop movements. He also later faces a court-martial for obstruction. And yet, the other guy who committed obstruction, who on 10 occasions, separate occasions, committed obstruction, in the Robert Mueller investigation, as innocent people do. That guy is set to return to the highest office in the land, and with a Purple Heart in tow. And all because he was protected up the yin-yang, both by judges he appointed and worse, by the highest court in the land, who sold their judicial souls to the orange devil who loathes the very legal system they are countenanced with protecting. It is disgraceful. Maybe this Jack Teixeira should have run for office as a Republican. By the way, folks, we're into our second half hour. If you would like to chime in on anything, get something off your chest, the number here at the station is area code 702-221-7283. That's area code 702-221-SAVE. Yesterday, we discussed the orange diaper rash's choice of Tom Homan to be his border czar. An appointment I mentioned at the time is not subject to a confirmation process. We heard several takes on his choice. I had more clips I wanted to play for you that we just didn't get to. We'll do that now. But first, if you missed it, this is Tom Homan.
Trump, he was suing the sanctuary cities, DOJ suing the sanctuary cities, pulling federal funds. Of course, day one, when Joe Biden came in office, he stopped that lawsuit. So that has to be put back in place. And look, I've seen some of these Democratic governors say they're going to stand in the way. They're going to make it hard for us. Well, a suggestion: if you're not going to help us, get the hell out of the way, but we're going to do it. So if we can't get assistance from New York City, and we may have to double the number of agents we send in New York City, because we're going to do the job. We're going to do the job without you or with you. But it's much easier to arrest a bad guy. Like I just said, we're concentrating on public safety threats of human and national security threats. Right. It's much easier to arrest a bad guy in the jail. Give us access to Rikers Island that we've been kicked out of. Let us get the bad guy into jail. It's safer for the alien. It's safer for the officer. It's safer for the community.
Hey, look, they gave me 5 minutes to say a few things. So if I offend anybody tonight, I don't give a shit. How many pounds of fentanyl didn't make in this country to kill Americans? How many known suspected terrorists didn't make it in the country? How many billions of dollars did the cartels make? President Trump is one badass president. He secured the border at a level we've never seen before. And I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that's been released into the United States under this administration. Don't get too comfortable. We're going to need some help. Do I have any volunteers that want to come back and help run the biggest deportation operation in the history of this nation? In January of 25, the greatest president of my lifetime walking back in the White House. He tells me we got, I say 120 days. He says, no, you got 60 to lock the border down. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I told the president. He comes back, I come back, we fix this shit.
I'll repeat what I said yesterday. He sounds nice. And is it just me, or does this guy have a strange way of talking? He sounds like he took a sip of water and then didn't swallow it all, and there's still a bunch of it floating around his mouth. He's just got a real lazy way of talking. I mean, he doesn't articulate. It's just irritating to listen to. Swallow the water, Tom. Anyway, this is the one clip I also played yesterday that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about Tom Homan.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is it worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
I made this point yesterday, and it bears repeating. It just fractures me that these anti-immigrant people like to frame this issue as one of national security, all the while working for and defending the biggest national security threat to this nation, the orange traitor himself. Yesterday, we saw and heard one clip from past guest on the show, Democratic pollster Fernand Amandi. This is what else he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, like you, Katie, I don't want to be a doomsayer. I'm not here to make people scared, but unfortunately, it's Donald Trump and the MAGA message which leads me to this position. I certainly hope Cecilia is right. I hope that the American people are able to exercise their First Amendment protected constitutional rights to peacefully protest. It's just that this time around, unlike in the first term, none of those guardrails that were there are going to exist. When there were protests in the first term, it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs who said to the president, you cannot use the military, Mr. President, to intimidate or stop the free exercise of speech. This time around, I fully expect them to implement either the Insurrection Act or martial law or something that will try and stifle immediately those types of mass protests. So it's a credit to the work that our lawyers and groups like the ACLU are going to do. But this is why the stakes were so high. It wasn't a joke when we called Donald Trump a fascist. It wasn't a cool campaign talking point. We weren't just saying democracy was on the line in this election. Those were the facts. The American people have chosen, I think, unfortunately, but now we are at the mercy of what the Trump administration and those serving in the administration do. They still have to take oaths to the Constitution, all of them, to preserve, protect, and defend it, and the rule of law that comes with that. I just don't have any confidence, Katie, that they will.
Nor do I, Fernand, nor do I, but incredibly well said as always. Law professor Neil Katyal, who was the acting Solicitor General under the Obama administration, who argued many cases before the Supreme Court, had this take on the birthright citizenship argument.
He also promised to sign an executive order on day one to end birthright citizenship in the United States. Can he do that via executive order?
No. Last I checked, the president can't override the Constitution. The 14th Amendment is as clear as day that there is no way he can do that. If he tries that, he will lose in court every day of the week.
Okay. Neil just said last time he checked, the president couldn't override the Constitution. I would just ask, when's the last time you checked, Neil? There's a new sheriff in town, if you haven't heard, and he don't need no stinking Constitution. And I got to say, Neil, you're putting a lot of faith in a Supreme Court who assisted Donald Trump in his ultimately successful attempts to delay his court cases so he could get elected and stay out of prison. First, by stalling for an unwarranted amount of time, and second, by eventually ruling that he has presidential immunity. And you're counting on them to do the right thing, the constitutional thing? Now, don't get me wrong. I love Neil Katyal. He's brilliant. He even attended Burning Man here in Nevada. He also flew here especially to see you two at our Sphere. But I think he's looking at this based on our rule of law and judicial system, when the orange trader doesn't give a rip about any laws, including those found in our Constitution. And when the highest court in the land has demonstrated time and time again that they are in the tank for Trump. We heard from Sherilyn Ifill yesterday. Sharon is the Vernon E. Jordan Jr. Esquire, a Dowd Chair in Civil Rights at Howard University. She's a law professor and former president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense. She's also a nationally recognized expert on voting rights and judicial selection. In 2021, Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world on its annual Time 100 list. She is one of the brightest and most articulate commentators we are lucky to have fighting on the right side of history. And you know, as much as I love Neil Katyal, Sherilyn offered a much more nuanced dissertation along with some history concerning this unconstitutional birthright citizenship travesty Trump is lusting for, with a loophole he might try and exploit. And this will be a three-parter between Sherilyn and MSNBC's Jen Psaki.
And since birthright citizenship was enshrined into the Constitution with the 14th Amendment, all three branches of government, regardless of the party in power, have consistently concluded that it applies to children born on U.S. soil, children born to citizens and migrants alike. Even Trump-appointed Judge James Ho, a member of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, whose opinions have at times been too extreme for the conservative justices on the Supreme Court, defended birthright citizenship back in 2006, saying, quote, "Text and history confirm that the citizenship clause reaches all persons who are subject to U.S. jurisdiction and laws, regardless of race or alienage." But that was then. And today, that very same judge who wrote that floated a new loophole that will be music to Trump's ears. In an interview with Reason Magazine, Judge Ho said, quote, "Birthright citizenship obviously doesn't apply in case of war or invasion." It's quite a broad definition. Joining me now is Sherilyn Ifill. She is the former president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. She's now the Vernon Jordan Endowed Chair in Civil Rights at Howard University. Sherilyn, it's so great to see you. I ran into you last week. It's always great to see you, hear your straight talk. Yeah. So Neil was pretty confident that Trump's executive order to ban birthright citizenship openly goes against the Constitution and precedent, and that that I would assume you agree with that analysis of the law. The rebuttal I've seen to that is essentially, well, that hasn't stopped some right-wing courts before with loopholes being floated. There was one I just floated from Judge Ho that migrants aren't migrants, but instead foreign invaders. What do you make of the powers? Again, I just was talking to Maura Healey. I don't want to scare anyone, but I want people to be very clear about what's happening here and what people will try to do over the next couple of years. So what do you make of that? And how do you think the judiciary could analyze this with Trump and his administration?
Yeah, I think you're asking the right question, Jen, and thanks for having me on. Neil is absolutely right. The first line of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution is every person born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen of the United States and in the state where they reside. The language couldn't be clearer. It's unequivocal. Birthright citizenship was, created and ratified to ensure that Black people, both free and newly freed, would be citizens after the Dred Scott decision and after the end of the Civil War. That's who it was intended for. But of course, tens of millions of now Americans and their families have benefited from birthright citizenship, including waves and waves of European immigrants in the 20th century. But there has been this continuous call by those on the right and to talk about birthright citizenship as though it is a policy choice rather than a constitutional imperative. And so you're seeing more of that here with Trump believing he can, by executive order, sign it away. I think he knows, and I'm sure that those around him know, that an executive order cannot trump a constitutional provision. What he is counting on is the investment that those on the extremist right have made in the federal courts, including the Supreme Court. And what they are hoping is that what you were describing as a loophole would be reinterpreted by the Supreme Court. The court has been clear in the past, more than 100 years ago, that the loophole that Ho is referring to really was meant to deal with the children of diplomats who are assigned to this country. Those children who are born here are not citizens because the diplomats are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They have diplomatic immunity. This has nothing to do with migrants who are born in this country. But the invasion language, that's the important part, Jen. This is the effort to do this mass denaturalization that Trump's right-hand acolyte, Stephen Miller, has talked about. Denaturalization is a process that can happen if there's been some willful misleading or there has been some fraud or some other criminal activity that made someone not really eligible for naturalization who was naturalized. But it's used in time of war. It is not used in time of peace. But because there is also this loophole in that statute, that 1798 Alien Enemies Act, that talks about invasion or predatory incursion, that is what they have been building up to. That's been the reason for the migrant talk. That's been the reason for the, they eat the pets. All of this has been laying the foundation to try and get the Supreme Court to see the migrants coming from Central America and from South America to see that as an invasion of some kind, to see that as a kind of predatory act. There's going to be an effort to talk about gangs. This goes back to Aurora, Colorado. This is why Trump said he's going to start his process in Aurora. The effort to suggest that gangs have taken over apartment buildings. This is all an effort to lay the foundation for the concept that we are somehow being invaded by migrants. You've heard many on the right use that language, that this is a predatory incursion. And I would love to be able to tell you that the Supreme Court would reject that out of hand. I want to tell you that, but frankly, I can't tell you that. I would just recall for people that, you know, the most famous use of the Alien Enemies Act was the Japanese internment. Now, the Supreme Court has said that the Korematsu decision was overturned in the court of history. There is no such thing as a court of history. It has not been overturned in the United States Supreme Court. And so I think we should worry, and I think we should be concerned. I know that the American Civil Liberties Union and other immigration organizations are ready and have been preparing for this for years because they take it very seriously. But I think this is going to be the effort to try to get this up to the Supreme Court and hope that the Supreme Court will step far out of line and far away from history and tradition, the history and tradition of birthright citizenship, and make some effort to read the Alien Enemies Act in a way that was clearly not intended by Congress.
Damn, she's good. Sobering, but good. And you know, one term that is both abused and overused is that someone is an intellectual. Sherrilyn Ifill is an intellectual. And again, as much as I love Neil Katyal, Sherrilyn Ifill offered a much more realistic, consequential, and informative take on this crime Team Trump is telegraphing they're going to commit against our Constitution. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you want to chat, we're down to our last 10 minutes or so, so if you want to chat, now's the time to do it. That's area code 702-221-SAVE. Something else that's been kind of floating around, and this is where elections really have consequences. And I will confess from the beginning that this would be a risky play and that there are no guarantees it would fly. But Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor is 70 years old and living with diabetes. There has been talk in Democratic circles that the justice should retire before Biden leaves office, and Democrats should pull out the stops, and Biden should exercise whatever political capital he has left to confirm a new justice. Because if Sotomayor remains in office and then something should happen to her in the next 4 years, the Supreme Court split would go from 6-3 conservative to 7-2 split. And when Clarence Thomas and Alito retire, which will likely happen in the next 4 years, and they're replaced with another Amy COVID Barrett or Brett Kavanaugh, we'd be looking at either a 6-3 or 7-2 Supreme Court if we lost Sotomayor for a generation. And former South Carolina Democratic lawmaker Bakari Sellers even had a suggestion as to who might be a good choice for Biden to nominate as Sotomayor's replacement. He began by saying, quote, "You know, Justice Sotomayor has been a more than able justice. I know that she may be having some personal issues that she contends with while serving on the bench. But you know, I don't want Justice Sotomayor to be another Ruth Bader Ginsburg in terms of staying too long," end quote. Sellers then said this.
So I hope that Joe Biden makes the next 10 weeks as consequential as he can. I don't care about drawing outside the lines or what Republicans may think about it. This is within your purview. You can actually do it, and you should do it. And, you know, one more thing, John, is you have a hell of a vice president right there who has a legal pedigree to sit on the Supreme Court, and let Republicans go crazy and ape. I'm even mentioning that option.
You're floating. Are you floating? This is 7:39 a.m. on the East Coast. Did Bakari Sellers just float Vice President Kamala Harris as a potential Supreme Court nominee?
Not only am I floating it, but I want to stir up everything. I want people's heads to explode this morning so we go into the weekend just knowing that the chaos has not ended just yet.
And logistical challenges aside, we'll hear what they are shortly, I completely disagree. Kamala Harris turned 60 last month on October 20th. Now, granted, she still looks great and is obviously still well in command of all her mental faculties. However, Amy COVID Barrett just turned 42 last year, and she's already been on the bench 4 years, since she was 38. If Barrett were to stay till she turns 70, that would mean that she will have served as a justice on the Supreme Court for 32 years. That's more than a generation. If Kamala Harris were to serve until she was 70, that would only be 10 years, not a generation, not even a childhood's years. And then we'd be asking her to retire. So, if you want to take the gamble and risk, then try and encourage Sotomayor to resign and nominate someone in their late 30s who will be there for an entire generation plus. And here's another caveat. Sotomayor has come out and said she has no intention of resigning or retiring. And Bernie Sanders has said she shouldn't. Which begs the question, if Sotomayor were a Republican and Trump getting set to retake power, what do you think would happen? I can guarantee you Sotomayor would retire and Trump would get his replacement, even this close to the turning over of power. Democrats seem content to play softball while the GOP plays hardball. Of the two games, which one would you rather watch? And again, I admit, this would be a risky play and there's no guarantees it would succeed. But it's something that's been floated, and I wanted to present it to you. 221-7283 is our call-in number, folks. That's area code 702-221-SAVE. To the phones we charge with some vim and veneer, and we will start with Bob. You're first. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Doug. Well, Eileen Cannon's going to be on the Supreme Court. That's the one that's going to probably be, Trump will suggest. And
she just
it's
might.
scary. The deportation has got me kind of freaked out. If they come after the illegals and whatever, who are they coming after next? Jewish people? I could tell you one thing: I'm not going willingly. My dad didn't fight in World War II to lose his leg for this putz. So it's just somber.
I hear you, Bob. I hear you.
Trying to stay positive, trying to joke, but it's the only thing good about this, like I said earlier, is the MAGA hat wearing people are going to get hit just as bad as the normal people. So.
Yeah, you're right, Bob. The question will be, will they have enough temerity and wherewithal to admit it? I mean, for the 8 years of Obama, when the economy was great, they were convinced it was bad. When it crashed under Trump, they thought it was great. I have an idea that if Trump implements his tariffs, and I'm not sure he will, but if he does and we go into a recession, these people will sit there and say, oh, the economy's great, just because Trump is in office. I mean, I give them that little amount of credit.
I can't wait to see the stickers on the gas pumps. Trump did that. Anyways, good talking to you.
We'll see, Bob.
I'm going to try to keep my chin up, but it's aiming down right now.
It's funny. I was just about to say, on my mother's grave, I swear I was just about to say, try and keep your chin up, Bob.
All right, well, thanks. Take it easy.
Hey, I appreciate you, Bob. Yeah, folks, it ain't easy. It ain't easy keeping your chin up in unprecedented times like this. And they're not completely unprecedented. We had 4 years of Trump. But keep in mind, he had the same dictatorial inclinations then that he does now. But he wanted to run for a second term. He wasn't going to play his entire hand before the 2020 election. But now, he's been out of office 4 years, plotting, planning, and now he's set to return to the White House, which again, I say, should not happen. But yeah, it's tough. It is tough. I'm messing around here. It's tough to keep a chin up when you know what's coming. Oh, I hear the music. That means we have worn out our welcome, as per usual this time every day. I thank you all for listening. I thank you for watching. We will do this all over again tomorrow, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.